Hey guys, great talk, appreciate it very much. All right, so I might be a bit atopical. I'm going to ask about animal rights. I guess Brian is into animal rights a bit. So my question is, what is it that's true of an animal that, if true of a human, would justify stabbing them to death for a hamburger? And if you can name such a property, something that, if true of humans, would justify doing this to them, would you be able to spell out the situation in which we do it to them without sounding completely psychopathic? Just to give a quick example, we'll not waste time. If you were to say intelligence, would it be okay to murder low intelligence people? If you were to say that it's the fact that it's natural, would it be, okay to murder humans if that were natural, etc.?
Right.
And I'll just say, when we went to dinner earlier,
He has the moral high ground based on dinner.
The vegan had to sit with 3 meat eaters eating these like big ass steaks. All right, so toss it to you.
Well, the amazing thing is I briefly considered what to order in light of having to face this moment, and then I said, fuck it.
Wasn't worth it.
That's right, yes. No, why make it easy on myself? Well, so there are many. So I'm basically a consequentialist, which means I just think the cash value of a moral proposition is in the well-being of conscious creatures now or in the future, actual or possible, right? So I think there are things that should be captured. They can be captured by consequentialism thought all the way through that aren't normally captured by it. So, for instance, when you ask why is it, why can't we just kill, if we find people who have the characteristics of livestock, why can't we treat them exactly like livestock, right? So that's sort of a question you just asked. Well, given the nature of what we are as social primates, treating people exactly like livestock has a different consequence on us and on our culture and on our capacity to live with one another than treating livestock like livestock. So it's not precisely the same problem, right? So and that's why cannibalism. I mean, there's a taboo around cannibalism that makes sense. I guess there could be some world in which we throw off this taboo and that we don't pay the kinds of consequences many of us feel we might pay, right? So we could just eat the dead. Because they're good protein and we're not at all sentimental about their bodies once we know they're no longer have a basis for experience, right? But in this world, at this moment, given all the moving parts, if people start eating their parents when they die, we feel differently about them, right? And that begins to derange a lot of many other things we care about. So you have to take all the consequences in view. Now, I think that it's impossible to defend factory farming as it is. I mean, knowing the details. I think it's just, we want to solve that problem somehow, right? And yet, I happen to think that it's not at all obvious that we can all be vegans and be healthy, right? I mean, we were talking, to give the full picture, we were talking about the problem of being a parent and having vegan or vegetarian kids, right? Now, my view of that is that you're running a kind of science experiment on your kids, and it's not totally clear how it's going to come out, right? And when I've run that experiment on myself, it's, I became anemic the first time I was a vegetarian for 6 years. All kinds of things go sideways in my blood the last time I did this experiment for a year. Now, no doubt with more intelligence or more attention to the details, most people can solve those problems for themselves as a vegan or a vegetarian, but perhaps not everyone can, right? And I think there may be another solution. I mean, I'm hopeful that this clean meat revolution that is struggling to be born will be one solution. So there's a company, Memphis Meats, whose CEO I had on my podcast, where they have a meatball that they have engineered that does not entail the death of any animal. It entails the removal of a single cell from the right animal. They grow these cells in culture, and then you have, unfortunately now it's still an $18,000 meatball, but ultimately, if it could be brought to scale, it would be a meat industry that wouldn't entail the suffering and death of billions of animals. There's this, if you really are worried just about the experience of conscious creatures, there is a way of flipping this around. I have no illusions that this will convince you, a committed vegan or vegetarian, but you have to have an actual counter-argument if you stipulate what I want you to stipulate here. If it's possible to raise livestock under conditions where they're really living lives worth living, right? So that you can really have happy cows or happy ducks or chickens or pigs, which is to say it would be better for those animals to have been than to not have been. These are net positive lives. Well, then that's a world in which veganism is not actually the most compassionate solution. That would be a world in which bringing those billions of creatures into existence and giving them net positive lives would be better than not, if you think well-being aggregates in some way. If you have the intuition that having a world with 7 billion happy people is better than a world with 2 billion happy people, stipulating that happiness accrues in some sense, right? You can run that same experiment. Now, I'm not saying we're anywhere near there with respect to our current practices, and I would completely support every differentiation one wanted to make with respect to the ethics of treating animals well. But it's not given all of the moving parts, it's not a straightforward question of saying, well, obviously everyone should be vegan right now.
Well, I would just answer it by saying, don't stab them for the hamburger.
Yeah,
thanks, guys.
Yes, I mean that is one answer, but I think it's well, here.